Tammy, you're going camera down right now. Keith is bringing us in. Tammy, you're going camera down right now. Keith is getting ready to bring us in.
Oh my gosh, Danny, I hear you. He said you take your camera down. Danny, you're speaking. Oh. And then you
Good morning and welcome to the South Carolina High School League Student Leadership Summit. This is our 14th year of offering a leadership summit, although the previous 13 have been face-to-face. As you know, COVID has created challenges all around the world, and it did not exclude the Leadership Summit. Team South Carolina, you are joining us through a variety of platforms. Many of you are joining us from the privacy of your own homes because your schools are 100% virtual with no face-to-face instruction. Some of you are joining us at school with personal devices, while others are in small group settings like classrooms with your teammates and/or coaches. Others are in the library, the cafeteria, and even the gymnasium, looking at video boards with leaders from throughout your school. Whatever setting you're in, we ask that you lock in to the information being shared because I feel it will be a benefit for you for life. A special thanks to NFHS Network for streaming our summit this year. We welcome our friends from the Illinois High School Association, the Massachusetts High School Association, and our guests from North Carolina, Georgia, Indiana, and New York. Thank you for joining us. Over the next few days, you will hear from student ambassadors from around the state of South Carolina, as well as some very accomplished presenters. The high school lead staff has been hands-on with the Leadership Summit with all hands on deck. At this time, I would like to welcome to the stream, the Commissioner of the South Carolina High School League, Mr. Jerome Singleton.
Good morning, and I too welcome you to the South Carolina High School League Leadership Summit. While this is a virtual event, it promised to be both exciting and rewarding. The success of this event largely depends on your participation. As you enjoy this summit over the next few days, be sure to participate by being an intentional listener and asking questions of the presenter. During these challenging times of national pandemic and social unrest, you have a great opportunity to be an ambassador for your school and your fellow students. We, the South Carolina High School League, know that you are capable, and we're counting on you. Enjoy the summit, and again, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Brooks at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, you will hear from one of our outstanding students from the state of South Carolina, one of our student ambassadors from Hilton Head High School. We welcome to the stream, Brooke Simons.
Thank you. In the words of her students, Dr. Yasha Jones Becton is a true gem. Whether she's in front of a classroom, on an athletic field, authoring a book, or in front of a congregation, Dr. Becton shines her light throughout many aspects of the community. Richland District 1 schools provided a framework and foundation for Dr. Becton, sparked her passion for education, and inspired her endeavors to make a difference in the lives of today's youth. Just like all of you, Dr. Becton was a student athlete in high school, playing on both the varsity basketball and track teams. While most of us dream of winning a single state championship during our high school careers, Dr. Becton was able to be a member of a track team that secured 3 state championships. After high school, she attended the University of South Carolina and Columbia College for her bachelor's and master's degrees, respectively. Additionally, she holds a doctorate of education degree in curriculum and instruction from the University of South Carolina, where she returned to teach diversity classes in the education program. But her work in education wasn't only in lecture halls in front of college students. Dr. Becton was recognized as a Teacher of the Year during her time at Dreyer High School and was a finalist for Richland District 1 Teacher of the Year during her 15 years in the district education system. Currently, Dr. Becton serves as a clinical assistant professor with her alma mater, the University of South Carolina, and serves as a family engagement specialist with the Carolina Family Engagement Center. She's authored multiple books and continues to further educational pathways for numerous organizations and individuals through her writing. Locally, Dr. Becton serves as a pastor of a congregation based in Columbia, South Carolina. It's evident from my research that Dr. Becton has made numerous contributions to our community from various organizations and has a wealth of knowledge beyond the scope of today's Leadership Summit. It's not often that you're able to hear an author, a pastor, a teacher, and a decorated athlete speak, especially for free. But it's even less often that a single person is able to speak to and represent all of these different roles. Let's learn from and appreciate Dr. Becton's message today about sportsmanship, and feel free to add your questions in the box at the bottom of your screen. Dr. Becton.
Good morning. Good morning. Want to make sure that I'm coming through on the screen, but good morning. I'm so delighted to be here on this morning. I want to say a special thank you to Brooke for that awesome introduction. Thank you so much. Also, a special thank you to Commissioner Singleton and to Coach Danny Brooks. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to many of you. I participated in the past when we had this summit in person. We are adapting today, and I'm excited to be here. And I hope that I'm going to share something on today that's going to ignite you as it relates to leadership. I'm talking about leadership on this morning, and I'm excited. I'm going to share my screen with you. If someone will check and make sure that I am allowed to share my screen, I will share my screen with you. But I'm going to be talking to you today about leadership and how important leadership is as it relates to not just being a student, but being an athlete and being successful in life in general. All right, so we're talking about leadership. Again, if the host of the meeting could give me the opportunity to share my screen, I will share with that presentation. But we know with technology, we adjust. And so I'm going to go ahead and go further, and I'll just keep checking back to see if it's been enabled. But one of the things, why are we talking about leadership? Why are we talking about leadership as it relates to athletes, as it relates to students, as it relates to life? And I want to share with you a few points from John Maxwell, who is sort of the guru of leadership, one of the persons that really speaks to the essence of what true leadership is. He has about 5 quotes that I want to share with you before we get started into my presentation on this morning. One, he says, leadership is influence. Leadership is influence. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how your leadership can influence the behavior and the actions of others. The second quote says, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. They buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. So people buy into the person behind the vision before they buy into what the actual vision is. He also says a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And so we're going to look at that as well. All right, I think I'm now able to share my screen. And then he also talks about if you want to be a leader, the good news is that you can do it. Everyone has the potential, but it isn't accomplished overnight. It requires perseverance. All right. Leadership isn't accomplished overnight, but it requires perseverance. And the last one, and the most important one, everything rises and falls on leadership. What a powerful quote. Even today, as we prepare for the inauguration, we know, even as a country, that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so that's why our discussion on this morning begins with leadership. And I just want to share some things with you. I hope that you will jot some notes down. But even if not, I'm a teacher by trade. And so I've tried to design it in a way that you can remember some of the main points of what I'm going to share with you on this morning. All right, one of the things as I talk to leaders in different areas, different capacities, one of the things that I always go back to is the very definition of what it means to lead. All right, when we talk about the definition of what it means to lead is to go before or with, to show the way. All right, but I really like to hone in on 3 words: to go before. So by definition, the word lead by itself means that you're out front. It means that you're ahead of the pack. It means that you're going in front of someone else. And so when we talk about leadership, we're not talking about just doing what is normal. We're not talking about doing what is average, because that is not leadership. But we're talking about going before. We're talking about going beyond, going a little bit further. So for today, I want to talk to you. And if I would give it a subtitle, is remember the ship. Leadership, remember the ship. And here we're going to talk about, if you remember the word ship, is going to help you to remember the 4 elements that we're going to talk about as it relates to leadership. All right, so ship is our key word for this morning. All right, when we talk first about leadership, the first element is for the S, which means to surpass. All right, and again, I'm going back, you'll see how this definition even mirrors the definition for lead. When you surpass, you go beyond in amount, extent, or degree, to be greater than, to exceed. When you surpass, you go beyond in excellence or achievement, or you are superior to, or to be beyond the range or capacity of. And so when we talk about element number 1, when we talk about leadership, first of all, you have to surpass something. And so as we look at leaders, there are basically 3 areas that we can talk about as it relates specifically to leadership. All right. Now, one thing that I will reiterate here, what I'm sharing with you, I believe will work in any arena, whether it's sports, whether it's academics, whether it's business, whether it's life. These nuggets will help in every area. So when we talk about surpass, leaders surpass in 4 areas. Number 1, leaders surpass in their expectations. All right. Leaders reach higher. Okay, if everybody else is reaching for a 3.0, the leader is reaching for a 4.0 or 3.5. All right, they reach just a little bit higher. I don't just want to be the regional champ, I want to be the state champ. All right, and so their conversation is different because they have a different level of expectation. All right, a different level of expectation. So leaders reach higher. All right. Secondly, leaders pursue perfection. Leaders pursue perfection. One of the things, I'm an avid sports follower, particularly with basketball and football. But one of the things I heard LeBron James talking the other day, and he said something I thought that was so key. But he talked about his practice after practice. He talked about his regiment after practice. See, the average person, the average player is just talking about practice, but leaders are talking about the practice after practice because they are pursuing perfection. They're not, and so they're willing to do number 3, which is give that extra effort. Leaders go harder. All right. Sometimes people think that great athletes are just born with all talent and abilities, and to a degree that is true. Some are born with certain things that help them to be better athletes, but that is no substitute for the pursuit of excellence. And so I'm gonna say that again. Players, the average player talks about practice, but leaders talk about the practice after practice, all right? Because they're in pursuit of perfection. They're pursuing something that they're trying to perfect. And because of these 3 things, leaders become an example. They stand taller, they stand out. Why? Because they're reaching for more, they're trying to perfect more, and they're going harder. And many of you know last year was a very difficult year. We were in the midst of a pandemic and still are. But during that time, ESPN brought to us The Last Dance. And it was a 10-part series, a 10-part documentary of Michael Jordan and the team, the Chicago Bulls, about how they won their various championships and that last season of their championship and why different things happened. But this story, even though it was the late 90s that this happened, this story is still being told. Why? Because when you are a leader, leaders author a story that never gets old. It never grows old. Even this week, it'll probably come up on Stephen A. show, the debate about who's the greatest, whether Michael Jordan is still the greatest. Why? Because a leader is authoring a story that never grows old. And so we saw with this documentary, it averaged 6.1 viewers. And when it reached Netflix, it was over 20 million viewers. Why were people so intrigued? Why were people so interested? Well, they were interested because of these things over here, because of how they had such high expectations, because of how they pursued perfection, because of the effort that went into these championships, and because of the example that they set, an example that still sets the bar for today. And so when we talk about leadership, when we talk about going after things, We're talking about pursuing it with a level of excellence, pursuing it with a level of effort that in the end, it's going to author a story that's going to cause your story to stand alone. And I want you to think about that on today. How are you authoring your story? We're going to look at a few people a little bit later and show you some of the adversity, show you some of the things that they overcame to become leaders in their area. But what are you authoring in your own story? What can you say about who you are and who you are becoming? All right. And we're going to talk about that as well. So again, leaders surpass in expectations, in excellence, in effort, and example. And if there was a number 5, I would say that leaders do this without excuse. All right. Leaders, if I was on Facebook Live, I'd say type that in the chat. But leaders do this without excuse. Leaders don't offer a bunch of excuses, because if you are looking for an excuse to fail, guess what? Life is going to give you one. As I was preparing this presentation, I was reminded of a student. His mother called me, said, I want you to look out for this student. My son only has one hand, and I want to make sure that he's successful. See, I was at the time, I was teaching keyboarding. And I was wondering, as I was listening to the parent, I was wondering, how did it even get past me that this student only had one hand? Well, the next day I found out, because the student was doing better in typing than the majority of the students in the class. Even though he had one hand, he was still doing all of the work, still getting everything in. He never mentioned the fact that he was operating with one hand. See, leaders just do the work without excuse, without excuse. He could have easily said, I can't do this like everyone else. I can't meet your expectations, but he never offered an excuse. He just did the work. He excelled. He got an A out of the class, where some others who had two hands did not. And so leaders go above and beyond. They give that extra effort. All right. The second element. So we're talking about ship, because I want you to stay with me. I want you to be able to remember this throughout the week. So the S is for surpass, and the H is for humility, which by definition is not being proud or arrogant. And humility in some ways can be a touchy subject right about now. But humility is key when we talk about leadership, okay? All right, so there are rules when it comes to humility. And when you break the rules, you are likely to suffer some of the consequences, all right? And I told you I'm an avid follower of basketball and football, so I will use a few examples in this regard. So there are rules when it comes to humility, all right? Rule number 1, predict effort and not outcomes. Predict effort and not outcomes, all right? Now, we all know, if you're an athlete, you know what trash talking is, all right? You know what it is for someone to talk to you and try to talk you out of your game. You know what it is for someone to come, on the field or in the arena, selling what we used to call wolf tickets, about how they are going to defeat you or how they are going to whip you. And we have seen this even recently, as you're following football, both on the college and professional level, where people were predicting outcomes and unfortunately they were defeated, all right? Because sometimes you just have to talk about the effort that you're going to bring, and don't try to predict the outcome. Save that energy for the field, save that energy for the court, save that energy for the performance. So when you're walking in humility, you just talk about the effort. I'm going to give it 110%. I'm going to leave it out on the field. I'm going to leave it out on the track. You talk about your effort rather than talking about outcomes. All right. Secondly, and this is a major rule when it comes to humility, always respect your competition. All right. Respect your competition. And I purposely highlighted these two scenarios because one, for those of you that follow football, you know that Drew Brees and Tom Brady just competed against each other, both over their 40s, both considered older quarterbacks, but they both competed. It was an excellent game. It was a close game until towards the end. But we noticed, if you were watching after the game, how Tom Brady greeted Drew Brees. And even after that, after the cameras were gone, or well, not all the cameras, obviously, but after it was on TV, the next day they highlighted the picture of the families playing together. All right. So it's important when we're walking in humility that we give respect to our competition, that you respect those that you're competing against. All right. I shared the picture of LeBron James and Anthony Davis when they were on opposing teams. All right. We know now that they're on the same team. All right. And so it's important that you respect your competition because you don't know what life is going to bring. And not only that, as they said earlier, I'm a pastor, but one of the principles that I try to live by is sowing and reaping. So if you sow respect, you're going to receive respect. But the flip side is also true. If you sow disrespect, you're going to reap disrespect. And I'm sure there were times when Anthony Davis and LeBron James were playing against each other that they had no idea that they would one day be playing on the same team. And so when you think about humility, how do you respect those that you are competing against? And how do you maintain that level of respect? All right. The third rule is let someone else bring the spotlight and you just bring the game. All right. Let someone else bring the spotlight. You just bring the game. All right. Many times as athletes, as people in any arena, you can really get sidetracked by bringing the spotlight. You can really get sidetracked by focusing on the spotlight instead of focusing on your game. All right. I can think about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can think about Clemson. I can think about a few teams just here recently that somehow lost focus on the bigger picture. I had this picture here with Justin Fields playing against Trevor Lawrence, Ohio State and Clemson. A lot of people expected Clemson to pull that game out. Now I'm USC Gamecock all the way, but I pull for Clemson when they're on the national championship level. But everybody expected Clemson. Clemson was bringing the spotlight, but Ohio State brought the game. And so you got to let someone else bring the spotlight. Don't worry about the hoopla and the conversation and the spotlight. Bring the game. Bring the game. And in the end, the spotlight will be on you. All right. So come prepared to do the work. Don't worry about, who's getting the accolades, who's getting the attention. Again, this is talking about humility. So let someone else bring the spotlight. But once the spotlight is there, you bring the game. You be prepared to go hard. You be prepared to give that extra effort. You be prepared to pursue excellence on a whole nother level. That doesn't require a whole lot of conversation. Okay, so element number 3, let me backtrack. So we talked about element number 1, which is surpass. If you are going to be a leader, you have to surpass other people as it relates to several areas, including your effort, your pursuit of excellence, your expectations, because that's going to cause you to emerge as an example. If you're going to be a leader, you got to walk in humility. All right. You can't always be proud and loud. All right. But walking in humility, respecting those that you are competing against, concentrating on your game, concentrating on your skills as opposed to the limelight. Those things are really important as it relates to humility. But the third element is the element of integrity. All right. It's the area of integrity. And with integrity, we're going to talk about 3 key C's as it relates to integrity. Now, I'm going to put on my high school administrator hat and tell you that I've seen many talented people, young people. I've seen many extremely gifted people. But because this area was an area of struggle, they did not reach their full potential. All right. Because they lacked integrity. All right. And so there are 3 key areas with that. One is your character. Your character. People say that character is who you are when nobody's looking. I say character is just who you are, because it's not about who's looking. Character is who you are at the core. Character is about what you stand for, where you draw the line. Do you have any boundaries? Is there anything you won't do? And are you clear about that? Character. And then your crowd. Who do you run with? Who do you hang with? As an administrator, I sat before parents and watched teenagers go to jail because of who they were associated with, because they were with someone that robbed someone. They were with someone that wanted to fight someone. They were with someone that did A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z. And so when everything went down, they were part of the group that had to go to jail. Or they were part of the group that had to be incarcerated. Not so much because they were guilty, but they were hanging with the wrong crowd. They were hanging with the wrong people. And so it's very important that you associate with people who have the same value system that you have. Associate with people that are going in similar direction that you're going in. And then lastly, your choices. Because every day we have decisions that we have to make. Every day, you being here was a decision. It's a decision to invest in yourself, right? To listen is a decision. There'll be people around you that are not really listening, they're not really tuned in. But a decision to listen, a decision to be tuned in, a decision to invest this week. I'm going to listen. Because why? Because I want to be that leader. I want to emerge as an example. I want to have this story. I don't want my story to be one of those stories of what shouldn't happen. But I want my story to be one of, hey, you can overcome anything. You can overcome any adversity. You can overcome any circumstance. You are writing your story right now by the choices you make, by the crowd that you run with, and by the type of character that you display. All right, we're all. And so one thing that I like about integrity is within that word, you find the word grit. Because what? If you're going to walk in integrity, it's not always easy. It's not always easy to make the right decision. It's not always easy to do the right thing. It takes some grit. It takes some extra. But guess what? That's what leaders do. Remember, we said leaders surpass. Leaders are willing to go the extra. They do a little extra work, even as it relates to their integrity. All right. They reach a little higher, even in terms of their moral standard. All right. So they're not lying and cheating and still, they're reaching a higher bar, a higher standard, even in their display and their behavior and their actions. So that's very important. All right. The integrity piece. So again, and I'm a teacher, so I repeat it because repetition helps you to remember. So we're talking about the ship. So first of all, leaders surpass, they go beyond. All right. If you are not doing anything extra than everybody on the team, you're not going beyond. So by definition, you gotta think about, how can I go beyond? If everybody's practicing 20 minutes, how can I practice 40? How can I practice 30? How can I practice a little bit more? How can I get my game together? They go beyond, they pursue excellence, they pursue perfection, they're willing to give the effort. Then leaders, number 2, walk in humility. All right, they're humble, not always bragging, not always proud and loud. All right, proud and loud. I can think about a professional football player that was, cutting up, dancing, and, over the other team's logo and just talking trash and different things, but they lost to the team. They lost. All right. And so when we are, again, walking in humility, we talk about our effort and not about the outcomes. We respect our competition because we're walking in humility. And then integrity, which is all about your character, your crowd, and your choices. Your choices. When I got up this morning, I looked at the list for President Donald Trump, those that he provided clemency, because I know one person on the list and just wanted to see if her name was there. She made some choices, bad choices, but she's provided now with a new opportunity. And life will give you new opportunities after bad choices, but you have to be responsible again for the choices that you make. Some opportunities don't come around a second time. All right. Not every opportunity will come around or cycle around back to you. And so the last thing that I will share with you, the P, all right, surpass, humility, integrity, and the P is for people centered. Because at the end of the day, our stories are bigger than us. All right. And I really want you to hear that. Your story is bigger than you. And sometimes when you're younger, you can't always see that. But I want you to know that your story is bigger than just you. As I shared, I now work at USC, but I also attended USC both undergrad and grad school. I was just the type of person that really wanted to stay home in Columbia, South Carolina. But just recently here at USC, Adria Wilson has a statue outside of the arena. But as she was talking and receiving the accolades for this, she talked about how her grandmother could not walk on this same campus, campus that she was able to later come to have a highly successful basketball career, go on to the WNBA. She's still doing quite well. And now they have resurrected a statue in her honor because of all of her major accomplishments and achievements. But she brought it to the forefront that this is the same campus that my grandmother could not walk on. Again, our stories are much bigger than us. And when we talk about being people-centered, that means that you recognize that your story, you don't just get to be great as you're great as the result of people investing in you. We become great as a result of other people's investment. And so when you do achieve a certain level, you have a responsibility to then turn that investment towards someone else. Just as you have been invested in, we have a responsibility to invest. That's why we say people-centered. And so when I want to go back to where we talked about humility, where I said, let someone else bring the spotlight, you bring the game. See, real leaders, they don't pursue the spotlight. But when the spotlight is on them, they spotlight others or they spotlight a cause. They don't pursue the spotlight, but they perfect the game. And there's a difference. There's some that just pursue the spotlight. And sometimes in doing so, they fall short in the game. But real leaders are people-centered. And so when the spotlight is on them, they're spotlighting a cause. They're spotlighting people. Another good example of this, Drew Brees. All right, I told you I was going to stick to the sports that I know, basketball and football. But Drew Brees became the Super Bowl MVP after Hurricane Katrina, and which Hurricane Katrina wreaked a lot of havoc in New Orleans, devastated the city. But in many ways, Drew Brees and the Saints brought back a certain level of hope to that community after winning the Super Bowl. Again, our stories are so much bigger than just us. It's so much bigger than just you or just me. I was amazed, I'm always amazed at the story behind greatness. I'm always amazed at the story behind greatness. When you look at LeBron James and look at the fact that he was born of a mother who was 16 years old. 16 years old. Part of the story says that they had to move every few months, moving around. At one school year, in his fourth grade school year, he missed, or prior to the fourth grade school year, he missed 86 days out of school, 86 days out of school. But there was a coach, Frank Walker, who was watching the instability, who allowed LeBron James to live with him and his family. Well, what did it do? It gave LeBron James, as he would share later, it helped him to elevate his expectations. He saw what it was to be raised in a two-parent home. He saw what it was to have brothers and sisters. He saw different things that he had not seen before. And this same football coach introduced him to basketball. And as we say, the rest is history. But these stories, I'm showing you the people behind the person, the people behind the leader. And to bring it full circle, to show you this concept of people-centered. Just as we just came out of an election season, when I went to my mailbox, and some of you may have saw, LeBron James did a major voting campaign across the nation where he really put his money behind people getting out to vote. So again, we invest in people. And then as you become a leader, you have that responsibility to invest back in people. And that is when you have the mindset of being people-centered and not me-centered. All right. And so he's doing a number of things around social justice and other issues, voting issues, but we don't want to discount the investment of Coach Walker for allowing him to even live with his family, to give him that another level of expectation, to give him another example. All right. And lastly, I'll close with just part of my story. And I again thank Coach Danny Brooks, who is pictured here in this part of the presentation. I am completely gray hair, as you can see, but Coach Brooks was my coach when I was 13 years old. I can't remember 13 right now, but when I was 13 years old, he was my track coach. All right. He invested. All right. And I was not a great athlete. I was not an exemplary athlete, but I was willing. I was willing to do the work. I was a good student. But his investment continued. Little did I know that years later we would be colleagues working at the same high school, and that he would allow me the opportunity to assist him with a track team that would go on to win 3 state championships. I went on to college, as my bio was read. What wasn't in my bio was the fact that I flunked out of college, was the fact that I didn't know if I was going to finish college. But I spent about a year or so, year and a half out of college because I didn't have the grades. But I went back and I finished. And then I went on to get my master's. And then later came back to USC to get my doctorate. And so I'm now teaching at the college that I once was not able to attend due to academics. And so when we talk about overcoming adversity, all of us have a story. All of us are going to face some level of adversity. All of us are going to face some level of challenge, something that you got to rise above, something that you have to come over. But there are people that are invested in you. I didn't know that I would know Coach Brooks some 30 years, 40 years later. I didn't know that, but he saw me as worth the investment. And there are people that see you as worth the investment. And so you have to be true to course, and you've got to rise. You've got to rise to the level of their expectations. You got to raise your own expectations. And you got to walk in humility and integrity. Why? Because it's so rare today. And become people-centered. And so that's what I share with you on today. I work with young people 24/7. I have all my life, and I've watched some waste it and some do amazing things with the gifts and talents that they've been given. But it all comes back to a choice. Are you going to lead? Are you going to run with the pack? Are you going to lead? Are you going to make choices and decisions that really don't benefit you? I hope that you would choose leadership. I hope that you would choose this conference this week as a time to just really focus in and think about what you really want out of life and how you plan to pursue it. I hope you will treat this conference as an investment in who you are, and you will see it as an organization that believes in you, as an organization that's invested in you. Why would I take time out of my schedule to come? Because we believe in you. We believe that positive things that are coming out of South Carolina, even more positive things. I showed you Adria Wilson, but there are many other Adria Wilsons. There are many other people that are going to do great things that are coming even from this audience. So I thank you for the opportunity to share. I hope that you got something out of today. And I believe they will share my information, but if there's anything that I can do to help, I'm more than willing to help. And don't forget the Gamecocks. Don't forget USC, but thank you again, Coach Brooks and Commissioner Singleton, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Becton. I'm Tammy Newman, the Director of Communications and Public Relations. Danny Brooks was to do this closing, but guess what? Dr. Becton, your closing comments have a grown man in tears. Very emotional time for him, but he was so thrilled to have you as. If you have a few more moments, if you could please allow me to ask you a couple of questions that came through during your presentation. Okay, here we go. One of the first questions, you mentioned the crowd and who you associate with. One of our questions is, what do you put your energy toward? What's the best way to put your energy? If you're surrounded by a bad or negative influence, should you use that energy to try to sway them to do better and more with their life? Or do you use that energy to distance yourself and get with a different crowd that's more, has a better and a positive influence on you?
I'm of the belief that you really perfect the gift that you have. You know, I believe that all of us have something that we can do exceptionally well. It may not be the same thing that someone else could do. It may be a gift, it may be a talent, it may be a sport, but I believe that we all have something. And so when you are in environments that are adversarial or not the best of environments, I think it's important that you begin to perfect whatever your craft is. And that will attract certain people to you. I am, as they said, a pastor. So yes, I believe in trying to navigate and help other people, but I also recognize that sometimes you have to allow people to make their own decisions and go their own way. But as you perfect those things that you have, those gifts, those talents that you have, is going to elevate your life. And in elevating your life is going to improve the quality of life that you have and begin to attract some of the right people to you.
Thank you. Another question, I believe, is coming from, it's coming from a parent that is viewing. And they say that you mentioned several times, put in the extra effort, do more than what is asked. What happens when your child is putting in that extra effort, doing everything beyond practice, giving that extra practice time and doing the other things, and they don't see the results that they had hoped as fast as they had hoped to get those results? What advice do you have to a parent that is watching a student athlete not get the results as soon as they'd like?
And we all have experienced that on some level. And there are two key things, and one is not easy to say, but sometimes we have to make sure that we're pursuing the right thing, the right area, the right thing. I shared that I ran track for 1 year. I ran track for 1 year, but track was not my number one sport. It actually turned out to be basketball. And so sometimes we have to make sure we have the right thing. Now, if you really believe sincerely that you have the right thing, then you keep pursuing it. All right. Because greatness doesn't happen overnight. None of this happens overnight. And part of that, as a parent, one of the things that I would recommend is making sure that those right connections are made, that you're giving your child a blueprint or a role model or a mentor. One of the things, my daughter loves to draw. And so I hired an art teacher to teach her drawing because I can't draw. I can't help her at all. So I hired someone who had the talent and ability to teach her. And so we have to make sure that we're pinpointing those mentors, those coaches, making those right connections of somebody that's going to take the time to pour into your child or you as a person if you are the student. So I think that's very, very important, who your mentors are and who is actually taking time with you.
Thank you. Also, throughout your presentation, you mentioned different scenarios and incidents and facts about professional athletes. We both know that professional athletes, not all, but some, tend to have some bad behavior. Do you have any tips for how a student athlete can learn now during these formative years of high school to go down a different path than what they see some of their idols?
Don't focus on the spotlight, focus on the game. Just focus on the game. A lot of people bring the hype and want the attention, want the hype. And as I'm sure Coach Brooks can attest, as different athletes transition to the NBA, the professional level, they look at and they research who you are as a person. They research who you were in high school. Because a lot of times personality, you don't change as much. And so it's important to mature to the point where you understand the ramifications of your actions and the weight of your choices. And I can think about just 2 or 3 people, even in the NFL, they had incidents, just one incident, but the incident was so awful that it ended their career. And so you don't want to ever make a decision that's going to completely alter your future in a negative way. And so to do that, again, you have to be rooted and grounded before you get to certain platforms. And so who you are today matters, how you invest, how you think about your level of integrity, even in high school is important. I'm not that different than who I was in high school. I've matured, but I'm not that different as a person. So right now is a good time to start thinking about who am I? And I said something earlier about where do you draw the line? When I talk to teenagers and I talk to young adults, don't tell me what you will do, tell me what you won't do. Where do you draw the line? What are your boundaries? Because if I listen to your boundaries, that's going to tell me a whole lot about who you are as a person.
Also, with social media being such a major part of lifestyles these days, do you have any tips for student leaders on how to best manage their own social media accounts?
Very carefully, because as coaches and employees, I mean, everybody goes to the social media account to see what's out there, to see, how loose or how tight that social media is being kept. And so I would just say, be careful with it, because we're in a day and time where you could do one thing and it just really take over social media, or be so many different places, and it's out of your control. It's completely out of your control. And so I would just say, really be careful in what you post. And, when, it's not a good place to be when you're angry, different things of that nature. Certain things, even in 2021, just should remain private. And it's much more difficult in this climate, but you don't want to be 20 years later, 30 years later, trying to explain a photo that really would be hard to explain.
Right. Such good advice. One of our viewers asked, have you ever wanted to give up? And if so, how did you overcome that feeling?
When I, like I said, when I flunked out of college, I didn't want to give up. I did give up for about a year or 2. I did give up. I did walk away from that whole experience. And what made me go back was actually a mentor. Again, who's pouring into you, who's talking to you. And I kind of at the right time, they said to me, you need to go back. You need to finish. And I will say that even my case is one of the few cases of situations where I was really allowed to go back and finish. And so you have to kind of find a way to get up again. And sometimes it's small steps, So sometimes you just have to congratulate yourself on the small steps. Not trying to do anything huge and great, but when you're overcoming adversity and you're getting back up, you just have to really be excited about the small steps, and just step by step, as long as you're progressing in the right direction, it's all good. You know, I tell anybody, it took me 7 years to get a 4-year degree. But once I got it, you know, once you get it, you have it for life. And so just overcoming adversity, always believing in yourself, you know, not beating yourself up is really important.
Also, do you ever think there's a time when it's okay to break the rules?
Well, now I'm gonna put on my professor hat. And in terms of social justice, equity, and activism, I think it's okay to challenge the rules when the rules are not just, when the rules are not fair, when they're not equitable. And I think there's a way to do that. There's a way to challenge the rules. People that know me know that I will challenge rules, especially if I feel like it's not fair to a certain demographic or not fair to a certain population. So you know, leaders don't always go with the flow. They rise above, they challenge what is not right. And so when I think about social justice, when I think about equity, yeah, there's some times where rules have to be broken because systemic racism is real. And so we have to push against some of the things that are in place.
And along those lines, is it ever acceptable, or what do you perceive as a acceptable excuse? Or excuse is ever acceptable?
That's a hard one. I mean, define acceptable. I mean, excuses are just that, excuses. You know, like I said, if you want an excuse, life is going to give you one, period. Life is going to present to you an excuse. But at the end of the day, it's just we have to push beyond it, you know. Sometimes, you know, it's real. It's real. But at the same time, you gotta kind of put down the excuse if you want to excel, if you want to go forward. You know, my daughter suffered from seizures for about 2-3 years. She couldn't write, she couldn't read. She had to be on medication for 5 years for seizures, but she's writing today. She's a meticulous writer. She's learning, she's on the AB honor roll. And so there are always going to be situations and circumstances that present themselves, but she could be using that as an excuse, but we don't talk about it. You just keep moving forward. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I believe that might be all of the questions we have. I'm gonna do one more check in our chat. Let's see. Okay, I think that's all that we can fit in right now, but I really want to tell you a sincere thank you, Dr. Becton, for being with us. The information you gave is, it's something that I think all of our viewers will take with them. I know I've got a sheet full of notes, front and back, where I was trying to keep up and keep, you know, I want to keep my ship afloat with everything that you gave me. So thank you again for being with us. And reminders to our viewers. One, we mentioned social media. I can tell you that a positive social media avenue for you to take is to always follow the South Carolina High School League. We have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And it's something that I think all of our student athletes need to make sure they're connected with. There's something that we update every day. It's always uplifting and positive. So, and also today, if you are watching and have the opportunity to do any screenshots or pictures of you taking notes or what have you, share your experience with South Carolina, share your experience with Dr. Becton. And we'd also invite you to visit our website at www.schsl.org. There, interesting stuff we just added recently, our calendar. Trust me, we've got a lot going on across the world, but one thing for sure, winter sports are chugging along and spring sports are coming soon. So check out the calendar, put those dates down for our wrestling and basketball state championships and other informative, important events. And the information you received from Dr. Becton, as well as our next two speakers on Thursday and Friday, all of the information that she shared, all of her contact information, as well as the other two speakers that we have coming, that information will be in a summit notebook listed on our website Monday by noon. So be sure to put that down in your notes, that if you miss something today, not only will it be available on NFHS Network, it'll also be available on our website in what we call the Summit Notebook. And a final reminder to please follow health and safety guidelines, wear your mask at home, at school. If you're out in the community for any reason, be sure to follow all health and safety guidelines, because we're going to get through this. And lucky for you, for me, for everyone, that we do have sports to keep us busy and keep us motivated. Again, thank you to Dr. Becton for her information on leadership. Also, we'd like to give a special thank you to Brooke Simons from Hilton Head Island High School for introducing Dr. Becton. She did a great job. We'd also like to thank our friends at NFHS Network for making sure that this broadcast was available nationwide. And what would we be without our viewers and fans from across South Carolina and the United States? Thank you for participating today. We hope that you enjoyed it. We hope you have just as many notes as I do. And again, a final reminder for tomorrow, we do start at a different time. Tomorrow we start at 11 a.m. Our topic tomorrow will be sportsmanship. Our guest presenter is Coach Andy Hallett from AC Flora High School. So again, 11 o'clock tomorrow, we want to see you right here, same place, different time, but we're looking forward to more information. And if you're like me, you're going to follow Dr. Becton's information, all of her advice, and keep your ship afloat. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
You guys were awesome. You're on fire. Keith, can you confirm that we're not live, we're not active now?
1 second, Danny.